Hello, Gelato Familia. Welcome back to another video. I'm George, the Disney Italiano, your host with the most. I got a very special guest on with me today and good friend, Mr. Jay Sherer, coming off his high of his short film, No Vacancy, but he is back again with another great short film, and it's in uh, uh, production right now, almost completed. It's called Disclosure. I did get a chance to watch one of the trailers, but Jay also has several of those out right now. So we're going to take a look at that in a little bit. But beforehand, Jay, welcome to Hollow Gelato. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's my first time on Hollow Gelato. I think I was probably on the previously branded channel, but this is my first time on Hollow Gelato, and I'm super stoked for you, George. It's awesome branding, great channel, and it's fun to be here. So thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking about the movie.
Absolutely. Yes, I can't wait either because after watching No Vacancy and doing several shows on Orange Grove 55 with you, where we got to talk with some of the cast and the crew and what it was like going around the process of making it. And honestly, I just have one disappointment with No Vacancy is at the end of it, I wanted more.
Yeah,
I want to see No Vacancy as a feature length film. Like, because
yeah.
the way that you created the story and the characters, they have so much depth. And I feel like there's a lot more story to be told with them. And but you did very well of how much that you got within that short amount of time. And I think that's even more challenging than doing a feature length movie because you can have a little more play with the editing and what have you and a little more story. But when you're trying to get it everything in kind of like a shoebox of a
Mhm.
story, uh, it's very challenging in my opinion. But
Super challenging.
so I'm going to ask you, but now moving into your second
Hmm.
uh, short film, Disclosure, if you want to give the audience kind of a little a synopsis of like what we can expect from this
Yeah.
movie, and also too what made you come up with the overall storyline of this.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, Disclosure is coming out November 1st on my YouTube channel, How Stories Work with Jay Shear. And the basic log line is that Audrey Draco is a person who is interviewing six people to find out what they know and if they know the truth about aliens, UFOs, and the paranormal phenomena that are associated with that. And it's going to be probably coming in about 15 minutes or so plus credits, which is cool. And so it's a short film. It's a fun film. It's a proof of concept film for a feature film that I'm almost done writing. I've got about 80% of that written. And so the whole concept was kind of like I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts, the Danny Jones podcast, the Julian Dory podcast, the Sean Ryan show, Joe Rogan Experience, where they were interviewing people talking about UFOs, aliens, paranormal phenomena, and you'd hear people like from the military, and they have a kind of perspective, and you would hear people from the UFO research community, and they have a different kind of perspective, and you even would hear some like religious scholars who have a completely different perspective, and they're like, no, it's not aliens, it's angels and demons and these kind of things. And so I was just kind of like ingesting like hours upon hours because I'm interested in this stuff. It's interesting stuff. I'm like listening to all of it, and I go, there's a fascinating movie to be made about disclosure that you hear these different perspectives, and then you as the audience member have to wrestle with them to a certain extent, and then kind of think like, well, which one of these do I agree with? So that's kind of the inspiration for the film. Then of course I started watching a bunch of X-Files and you know, things where there were paranormal phenomenon, and investigators were trying to figure out what was going on. Started watching a bunch of those too. So yeah, it's been a fun process, and I am the co-writer of it, and then I directed this one, second film that I've directed. Super fun, love directing, and can't wait to do a feature. So that's the next goal.
Awesome. And from the footage that I have seen so far through some of the material that you had sent us through the group chats and everything,
Hmm.
which awesome work. I love the perspective that you went with it because it basically shows the optic lens of us as the viewer that we're sitting across from these people and they're engaging with us in the storyline, and you kind of get a little bit of a feel of that when you watch like a movie or a television show of like interrogation or like a documentary series. So I love how you took that perspective, kind of mixed in with a fictitious storyline, but put it in a real world setting. And
Yeah.
you just kind of like combined all that together, and boom, you have Disclosure.
Yeah.
And also, too, I have to say, I love that you did it in black and white.
Mhm.
I love that because I think it's a kind of filmmaking art style that a lot of people don't utilize. A few of my favorite films, Spielberg's Schindler's List
Oh yeah.
and Scorsese's Raging Bull,
Sure.
that I love that they were done in black and white. It just brings an extra depth uh, to the film. What made you decide to go that route, to go black and white?
A couple things. One thing, it is a period piece film, so it does take place in 1966. So not that needs to be black and white, but that was kind of like a thought process of like, hey, this would make sense in this context. And the other piece of it that made me want to film in black and white, there was two parts of it. Um, there's another. So the other way that this film came about was that Nathan and I have already written another short film, but it is a much more difficult short film to shoot, and I would love to collaborate with Lucas Colombo, the director of photography for No Vacancy, but Lucas is really busy, and I live in northern Colorado, and he lives in California. So I was trying to figure out like how can we do films without Lucas so that we could do more of them faster. If we're gonna do like a feature or something, then we're gonna hire Lucas. But how do we do like a films if we don't have Lucas available to us? And and so I asked Nathan. I said, Nathan, would you be comfortable being the DP, the director of photography, for this project? And Nathan's never done this before, right? Like Nathan's never been a DP before. He's not a camera guy inherently. Like, and so I said, here, let me give you some criteria that we would work with. Let's, instead of getting like super fancy cameras, I'm a huge proponent of the fact that what we have in our pockets, this little device right here called the iPhone, is such a powerful tool that you really don't need some of these fancier cameras. Like we had Red cameras that we're shooting on No Vacancy on, and Red camera is like one of the premier digital film cameras that you can get, but they're like 50 grand a piece, right? Like I can't pay 50 grand, and so we were going to do this other film, but it's a little bit more complex of a film. And I said to Nathan, I said, you know what? I feel like if I ask you to be a DP on this, I'm probably asking you to do like a really big project for your first project ever. And like we should collaborate a little bit more. And like you shouldn't have all of that on your shoulders because otherwise it's going to be too difficult. So I wrote Disclosure. It's a related film. Some of the same characters that exist in this film are in this film too. And I said, you know what? I'm going to write it as a super simple story, but it'll still be interesting. And the reason why was because, like I said, I was listening to these podcasts. I listened to 3 hour length podcasts talking about aliens and UFOs. And I was like, okay, why is that interesting to me? It's because the subject matter and what they're talking about is compelling by itself. You don't they're sitting at a table with Joe Rogan or with Danny Jones or whoever. But I'm still listening for 3 hours. And so one of the things that I thought of was I said to Nathan, I said, what if the entire film, this is going to sound crazy. If I say this, you're going to be like, what? That sounds super boring. But I encourage you to still watch the film anyways, because I think you'll not find it as boring as it sounds. The entire film takes place at a table. And there's not a bunch of locations. It's one location at a table. Now, obviously, different time frames because we're interviewing different people. But so to answer your question a little bit more directly, why choose black and white? I was also looking for ways to remove complexity, and I was watching Citizen Kane, one of the most innovative films of all time. And one of the things that Orson Welles did in Citizen Kane, there's a scene in the newsroom, and we're not really supposed to know who the newsroom people are. Their faces are kind of always hidden from us. It's filmed in the whole movie's in black and white, but there's like all this light play where like light comes in at different angles and stuff, and that is what I'm going to use for the next short film that we're going to make. But because of that, I was like, oh, you know what? We should film in black and white for this film as well. Why? Reduces complexity. You don't need to worry about color grading. You don't need to worry about. I mean, yes, you change light and you change exposure, you change all that kind of stuff, but you don't. There's not as much to worry about. And we were doing period piece clothing. Well, I don't have to be super accurate because if like the Air Force jacket was supposed to be navy blue and it's actually green, you can't tell the difference because it's black and white, right? Like, so you remove complexity, it makes it a little bit easier to pull off. And I just really like the dramatic nature of the black and white, right? Like, there's something about black and white that makes you want to pay attention, I think. And and I know that paying attention sometimes is hard on YouTube because people, that they have a limited attention span. But I think if you really stick with it, you will really enjoy the fact that it's in black and white and that it is kind of, even though it's a little bit more conversational, every bit of conversation that we're like narrowing down 3 hours worth of a podcast perspective into like 30 seconds to 2 minutes of dialogue. So it's like, I think people will still enjoy it from that perspective. And for us, it was just a little bit simpler to pull off while still being really dramatic and still being able to capture um, the intensity of what people believe and why they believe it. And I love what you said too about we filmed it direct on so that when people are being interviewed, you feel like you're the one interviewing them and that they're coming back at you across the table, which adds a sense of dramatic conflict to it because it's almost kind of like you, George, have to make a decision about what I'm saying. Am I lying to you or am I telling the truth? You know what I mean? Like, so we wanted to kind of encapsulate that too, which was a really fun kind of process. So I'm really glad you picked up on that because that's definitely intentional.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because for me, like I study film. Like anytime I go in and watch a movie, everyone's like looking for like the big stunt performance and the biggest explosion. Like no, I'm like watching like the character arc of
Yeah.
each character and how they progress in a story. And
Yep.
and even with kind of going back to Spielberg, and I think I said this before many times, but I always use this as a reference when you take a film of Jaws when he puts the lens of us as if we're the shark
Yeah.
and we're going towards the prey
Yeah.
and we're like no stop, like how do we stop this thing, but the
Right.
camera keeps getting closer and closer and it's like oh my gosh, like it feels like we're the ones attacking,
Totally.
so I mean, and I know in a way that was only his way of doing it because the shark wasn't working 90% of the time, but I think it made more depth of the movie and more suspense. So yeah, I always love looking in the different camera angles of how
Yeah.
something is shot because you can have the same scene but shot in a different perspective and it won't give as strong of an impact.
100%. Yeah. I'm really glad you said that because I mean, like I didn't go to film school. I've studied film my not my entire life, but a large chunk of my life for the last 2 decades, a lot, and mostly from the writing side. But when you write something and then you direct something, those shot choices become really, really, really important. And I spend a lot of time making sure that the shot choices that we come up with are intentional. Um, I was telling somebody the other day about the fact that there are 6 characters that are being interviewed. Right, there's a total of 9 characters, but there's six characters being interviewed. A lot of characters for a short film, actually, but again, we wanted to show all these different perspectives, so we had to kind of jump back and forth between them pretty quickly. And there are 4 people whose perspectives are inviting. We might agree with them, we might agree with parts of them. It's like it's kind of interesting what they're saying. They all believe that something is definitely happening and they're trying to explain it. For those characters, there's a couple choices that we make that I think are really fun. One of them is we always shoot them. We shoot everybody face on, but when we choose an alternate shot for them, for the people that we like listening to, we do a 3/4 angle shot, so we see more of their face. For the people we don't like listening to because they're like telling us that it's classified and they're not allowed to see it, we shoot them from but from a direct side angle, so we can see less of their face and we trust them less. Right? There's all these little choices that we're making, just so that we can say we are intending to put you as the viewer in a place where you feel the way I feel when I'm listening to the people on the podcast talk about them and go, do I agree with them or do I not agree with them? Right. And like, we're trying to do that same thing
Well, it's funny
for
that you
this.
say that because I don't know if you've ever done this. I mean, but I'm a nerd and a geek with this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in a movie theater and I'm watching a movie and I'm like, okay, why did the director decide to make that shot? I would have done it completely differently
Yeah. Yeah.
and it would have made a much more better impact. And I'm probably like the only one in the theater that's thinking that. And it's
Yeah.
like, but that's just how I operate because I love telling great story. And it's almost where when you do get the director's perspective on it, you can have a much different way of how another director would do it. So
Totally.
it's like again, and not really to down someone else's craft, but it's just like if I was ahead of making that movie, I would do it something like completely different.
Yeah. The one thing that always occurs to me when I'm watching film and a director makes a choice like that, the most common response I have is, wow, you spent a lot of money on that shot just because you thought it was a cool shot, but it doesn't do anything for the story. Right,
Exactly.
like that's the one. That's the biggest one. Is like there's. It's one thing to do shots like you said with Spielberg, where he's like, oh, the shark's not working, so let's just figure out how we can film this in a way that's like problem solving on set. And sometimes you end up with shots that you don't love because I'll give you an example. We have one shot where a character is seated at the table and then stands up, and we were going to do a gimbal shot where we actually step back, follow them up, and then follow them around so it comes around and swings around. And we were just running out of time, and we tried that 5 or 6 times and couldn't get it nailed down. And it's the first time we were using the gimbal that we were using, and we just went, you know what? Like, we're just not going to use this shot. Like, let's just abandon this shot. We'll get to the other shots that we know we need. Um, but I think that's like the thing that I think, because a lot of directors I think are really good about choosing to shoot films in a way that, I'll give you a really good example, and you can tell me what you think of this too. I watched The Shining for the first time the other night. Never seen it before until literally 3 nights ago. I'm just not a horror fan. I didn't grow up a horror fan. Um, I'm gonna say two shocking things that are contradictory. Have you seen The Shining?
I have. And
Okay.
actually, it's funny that you bring that up because Stanley Kubrick, the way he directs, he is like so meticulous.
Yeah.
Like he will do like 150 shots just for like a 5 second
Yeah.
moment in a movie.
No, totally. And so my two conflicting things are, I love Stanley Kubrick's directing. Like the shot choices that he makes. Even like when the movie's opening and they're following the family in the car all the way up the mountain, and it in most movies you would see that shot, there would be really nice music playing and you'd be like, whoa, what a beautiful landscape to film in this in, right? Like nothing about the shot looks intimidating or problematic or anything, but they're playing a really scary music track over it, and you go, where are these people going and what are they getting themselves into? I'm already on edge, right? So I think that he makes like so many good shot choices in that film. What was really fascinating about it is I had always heard that like Stephen King didn't like the film, right? Stephen King had problems with the film. And I watch the film and I go, oh, I know exactly why Stephen King has problems with this film, because it is a film that almost kind of relies on the directing to make it compelling. And the only emotion that you're really ever supposed to feel is like this fear or tension kind of feeling. There's no, I mean, yet you might feel sympathy for the kid, you might feel sympathy for the wife, but they don't even try to make Jack Nicholson's character likable at all. Like he's just a jerk from the very beginning. And so I think that I go, oh yeah, okay, so this is not like a complex film. This is a very simple film made really, really well. Not a lot of character development. That's okay. You can do that. But I was shocked because of but the two things I came away with were, I really don't like this movie from a storytelling standpoint, but holy cow, did Stanley Kubrick direct this well, because it's amazing.
I think, yeah, that's a very great point because I think that's why I like The Shining,
Mm,
just in the sense of how he created it as a filmmaker.
yeah,
When it comes to storyline wise, and when it comes to characters, the characters have no interconnection with one another. Like there's
right,
nothing where going in as an audience that you could say, I could relate to this character, or what
right.
is their backstory that literally made it to be where, you know, Jack Nicholson's character, Johnny goes
Yeah.
crazy,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
why does the young boy have this kind of sensory power to connect
Right.
with the guy that telepathically?
Yep.
Like, it's like, well, how did this come to be? Like, what happened traumatically in their life
Yeah.
that brought them to this point? As you said, there's no backstory,
Right.
there's no character development. It's just a guy takes his family to an empty hotel for business.
Right.
He ends up losing his mind and seeing apparitions that are telling him, "You must kill your family." It's like, okay, like, yeah, when you put that pen to paper, it's like absolutely nothing. But of how Stanley Kubrick went with the filmmaking style, nothing else mattered.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous piece of filmmaking because you're always a little off kilter. You're always like, even when you're following the kid around in the bike, and you'll have these flashes of like either what happened or what will happen. I mean, literally, he films it in such a way where he's following the kid riding around on a tricycle around the hotel, and every single corner you just get like scrunched up, like what's he gonna face around this corner? Oh, I'm glad it's nothing. What's he gonna face around there? Okay, I'm glad it's nothing. Then the third one, you're like, oh my gosh, there it is. There's the thing I didn't want to see. And then even just I actually wish there was more of the hotel like history, and like when they do the flashbacks, I wish there was more of that creepiness that's in there,
Mhm,
because
yes.
I really like that aspect.
Yeah,
But
I wish he
it's
would've went, like, more, like, Hollywood Tower Hotel
yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah,
backstory kind of
yeah.
thing, like, that would've been really cool.
That would have been amazing. So incredibly well directed movie. But I actually went out and bought the book The Shining because I can totally see why Stephen King was irritated, right? Like when you listen to when you listen to King talk about it, um, what he talks about is, well, this was supposed to be a story about a guy who is trying to overcome addiction, and like losing to that battle. But you don't really, do they hint at that in the film? Yeah, a little bit. They say like, oh yeah, like he hit the kid one time, and he was drinking. He's not drinking anymore, but then you do see him drinking. So it hints at it, but it doesn't give us a real picture of like, some of the people in your life that that have faced addiction and stuff like that. You still love them. Yeah, there is no loving his character. From
No,
the moment he shows up, you're like, I don't like this guy. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just, I think it's a different take on it. Is it a terrible take? No, it's just that it does what it's supposed to do, and it does it really well, and it's a Stanley Kubrick sort of master class of directing. Even though I hear that Stanley Kubrick is not a good person to work with. I've heard
a
that.
lot of people
So
said, yeah, like, he does brilliant work,
yeah.
but I remember when, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, when they were together and they did the
Oh
movie
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Eyes Wide Shut together,
Right.
they said they were like, it was a brilliant piece of work, but they were exhausted
Yeah.
after that the film wrapped. And even going back to The Shining, Shelley Duvall
Yep.
had said that, like, a lot of times, like, take after take, it
Yeah.
was like she couldn't, like, physically or mentally do it anymore. He would, like, push her
Yeah.
to, like, "Okay, I want more, I want more," and it's like, "Well,
Yeah.
how much more do you want?" Like, so, yeah, he did have that reputation
Yeah.
of being, like, a filmmaker.
I've heard, and not to just stay on Stanley Kubrick for a long period of time, but I have heard a lot of directors, when they don't have confidence in their actors, which not having confidence in Shelley Duvall would be crazy, but like when they don't have that confidence in the fact that actors are trained to act, they literally try and emotionally manipulate that person into behaving the way they want them to behave, as
Mhm.
opposed to directing them on how to behave. They will be mean to them and then be nice to other people, so that they feel like they're like, wait, why doesn't he like me? And then like when that comes out on screen, the person's anxious because they're like, why does this person not like me, right? I, as a director, I don't do those things because I feel like I'm going to hire people that know how to act. I'm not just going to manipulate them into doing what I want. It's going to be a collaborative process where we get to a place where we're all happy with what we're going to go film. But everyone's different, I guess, and you can do you can go work for whoever you want to work for, however you want to work for. But I wouldn't want to work in those conditions. So good on him, but not what I'm
Yeah,
gonna do.
I wouldn't either. And I have one last thing to say about somewhat of The Shining.
Yeah.
One, after I was done watching it, I tried to stay as far as I could from any twins. Like anytime I saw like a
Yeah.
pair of twins, I was like, no, stay away from me. Like,
Yeah.
um, but that's how captivated like those scenes were. Like as you mentioned, like when the boy turned the hallway and you just see those two girls
Yeah.
standing at the end of the hallway, and it's like they're just like in a dead freeze. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like I want to know more of that, you know.
Yeah.
But and then number two, I thought The Simpsons did it very well with their interpretation of like
Yeah.
the shinning in the
Right.
Treehouse of Horror.
That's awesome.
So, but going back to kind of what you said when you said to watch, you know, it's basically a story where people are just sitting at a table,
Yeah.
you know, and I would think that would possibly be something boring,
Yeah.
but actually that's the opposite of me because one of my all-time favorite movies is 12 Angry Men,
Oh,
and
such a good movie.
98% of the movie
Yep.
is in one room
Yep.
at a table with all these men that are like discussing of, you know, guilty or not guilty. But I love that because it secludes you as a
Yeah.
viewer, that you are stuck in this room
Yep.
with these characters and they all have a different layer of perspective of why this person thinks this person is guilty or innocent,
Yep.
and you're amongst them. And
Yeah.
I absolutely love that kind of storyline. So again, going back to Disclosure, of how you angled the camera and it's like right down eye to eye level, you're across the table. I absolutely love that. I love that way of filmmaking. Now again, what we were just discussing about character arc and character development and everything. Now, you said that you have 9 characters altogether, but
Mhm.
6 of them are the ones that are being basically interviewed.
Right.
What made you lock in to these particular characters?
Mm.
And what differentiates one after the other?
Oh, good question. Okay, so yeah, this makes me excited. You're asking really good questions. So the first step was, okay, for these 6 people who are being interviewed, of all the podcasts I've listened to where people are expressing their opinion about what's going on with paranormal phenomena, what are some of the most interesting perspectives that I've ever heard, right? And so we have an educator who's also a researcher, largely inspired by a UFO researcher named Diana Pasulka. Really one of the people that I like listening to the most because she's very much like open to it being different things, but has so much concrete research that it's hard to say like, you listen to some of these people and their research is pretty much like, oh, I talked to 3 people and they all told me the same thing, so I believe them all, right? But Diana Pasulka is like one of those people who's like, no, she has all of her ducks in a row. Like, shout out to our friend Seymour Duck. But yeah, I mean, she's got it like down pat. She knows exactly what's going on and why it's going on, and she has a rich history of data around her. So we have a character who's kind of inspired by her from like more of an educator, like writer perspective. We have an independent researcher who is really knowledgeable about stuff, but probably people would look at this person and be like, huh, they seem like they're kind of a nerd, and I don't know if they're too into this stuff. Kind of like that type of thing. We wanted to give like both ends of that perspective. Then we have a military leader, and the military leader again. This place takes place in the 1960s, so we're talking about the Cold War, America being like in the Cold War with Russia. So this guy is like, I'm not telling you anything, and like it's a very abrasive kind of like, hey, you're not allowed to know. We have a character who is kind of like kind of cool and approachable, but isn't giving us a lot of information. So we're kind of like, what is this guy up to? And then we also have a priest. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was there's a podcaster named Julian Dory, and Julian Dory I think is a really solid podcaster. He'll talk to a bunch of different kinds of people. He talks to mostly journalists and YouTube journalists, and and those kind of people. But he interviewed a guy that I know that I've met before named Hugh Ross, and Hugh Ross is the founder of Reasons to Believe, and Reasons to Believe is a science channel or a science publisher of books and research, but they're also faith-based in their perspectives. So when I decided to put a priest on screen, I wanted to have like what does a person of faith feel like is happening in some of these scenarios, and so he gives his perspective on that as well. So those are the kind of the 6 perspectives that we're looking at. Oh, and then there's also one of my favorite performances in the film too. They're all great performances, but one of my favorite performances is we've got a clinical psychologist who, this is again the 1960s. This is long before therapy became normal and good and everyone was cool with it. And this guy's a very abrasive and thinks a lot of people are crazy kind of a guy. So that's one of the other perspectives that we have too.
I absolutely love that because I love how you chose different backgrounds, different professions, because depending on what the profession is or where the character has come from and where they're going, they can have similar understandings of what's going on.
Yep.
But at the same time, they're going to put it in their own style. Like a priest is not going to talk like a cool guy. A cool guy
Right.
is not going to talk like a psychologist. It's like they're all going to have their kind of style of language.
Yep.
But where you can understand as the viewer, it's like, okay, they're kind of all on the same page, but they're all giving their own interpretation of what they experienced.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And I love that.
Yeah, because I think differing perspectives inherently produce conflict, right? Like if it even just in a funny example, right? Like if I show up and I say I like vanilla ice cream, and you say, oh, that's crazy, I like chocolate ice cream. Instantly, it's funny conflict. It's not real conflict, but now you and I can have a discussion about why you're wrong and why I'm wrong. So if you take things that are of more consequence, like what exactly is going on and why don't we have more information about it? And it's kind of scary because it's an existential thing. If aliens are real, if UFOs are real, if paranormal phenomena is real, if angels and demons are real, like that is of consequence for all of us to know. And so I think when you have those different perspectives, it becomes suddenly like, one of the things that we're kind of hoping that the audience will do is kind of think to themselves like, well, which one of these characters do I agree with the most? Right? Like that's kind of like one of the things that we're trying to push there. So,
and that's what I love too, that how you did, which we are going to watch one of your trailers here in a moment. But what I loved of how you cut multiple trailers based off of each character, because that way it would be nice to actually have them all in one trailer, which obviously you do when you have it wrapped up in a whole story. But what I love of how you broke each one down is you gave each character their moment of the spotlight to draw the audience in to say, whoa, okay, so this character is saying this, but then this character is saying that. Oh, okay, I got to see how these characters all intertwine together. I have to go see this thing as a whole. And I absolutely love that. I love how there's different perspectives, even just within the trailer, that would give off in the film itself.
That's awesome.
So I absolutely love that. So I'm going to share my screen here.
Cool.
And we are going to watch one of the trailers.
Nice.
The most compelling evidence I've found is in crash retrieval. Well, I think we have to conclude that the US government is lying to us. Imagine that you found advanced craft from another civilization while simultaneously operating under the existential threat of nuclear annihilation. But still, I think there's a compelling case to be made that we've been visited. That's what my research suggests.
There you go. There's our trailer of Dr. Sherer.
I absolutely love that. And again, with that trailer, I love how you gave a little taste of where everyone that's involved. but it just kind of shows them being interviewed without actually saying anything. And then
Right.
you throw in the big question, who knows the truth? And it's like, oh, I want to find out. I want to know.
Yeah,
So
totally.
it's all about those little moments of what you can do with not even just the story, but just the trailer. Because I feel like the trailer
Yeah.
is very significant to tell the story because it allows a gateway
Mhm.
to the audience to say, okay, this is interesting.
Mhm.
I want to know more.
Yeah, and trailers are really difficult. I'm the one that cut all the trailers myself. And trailers are really, really difficult because in a 15-minute film, I can't show you too much, right? Like I don't want to give it all away, you know? And so for some of these characters, their actual on-screen time is probably like a maximum of like 2 minutes for some of them, right? Like 'cause they're not on screen for a long period of time. So, but I also wanted to showcase one of the reasons why we did the film this way, and one of the things I knew I needed really, really badly when I was casting was I needed people who could be compelling because it's just them at a table. So like if they're not compelling, if they're not a very good performer, then it's not going to come off well. So I was very, very, very diligent about trying to find people who I was like, these people understand what I'm trying to accomplish. They understand what the vision is here, and they're all behind it. And we were really lucky. I mean, the guy who played the priest, Art Razzo, fantastic actor, by the way, has done some really cool projects in the past. Art he's a priest, so he uses Bible verses from time to time, and
Mhm.
he was telling me, he was like, I was digging into the Bible verses. I was reading them all. I didn't even know that stuff was in the Bible when before. I'll try to get Art on on a show if you ever want to talk to him about prepping for the role and stuff, because it was really, really cool to hear him like this. It's like what you want to hear as a director, that someone is so into the role and so into the film that they're just all in, right? And they're like, I want to understand this character almost even better than the writer understands, or the director understands the character. And it's like, that's awesome. That's really
Yeah,
cool to see.
I would love to have someone on to talk so I can like literally deep dive with them to
Yeah.
kind of dissect of how they prep and prepare as an
Yep.
actor and how they get into the character, the research, the study, the like how do you because it's even though they call it acting, yes,
Mhm.
you are acting, but essentially you have to become that person.
Yeah.
And I love watching the genesis of that. I love
Oh,
hearing
it's
about
cool.
that. So yeah, I would love to have whoever you can get on. I welcome whoever you can bring on. That
Awesome. Yeah, I'll bring them because they're all excited about it too, and I'd love to have them on. And it's always fun to hear too. Like, I have one way of viewing something, but they might have a slightly different way of viewing it, and it's that collaboration that makes for the better thing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So, oh yeah, we'll definitely get somebody to come on, and or multiple people to come on,
awesome.
cast and crew.
Now let me ask you this, and again, you don't have to go like step for step because I know it's a huge process to
Yeah.
make a short film, let alone cutting a trailer and everything. But just to kind of give a little bit of a gist, and this isn't just for disclosure, this can also run for no vacancy.
Sure.
If you want to give the audience a little bit of like a rundown, like from start to
Mm.
finish, of like what it takes to really piece uh, a short story together.
Yeah. Well, so because I come from a writing background, there's a lot of really famous directors who are actually not writers. Like Steven Spielberg is famously very much a director, not a writer. He's working with somebody else who's writing. But like somebody like George Lucas is a little bit of both, or somebody like Jordan Peele is a lot of both, right? Like he writes it and then he also goes and directs it. Well, being my background being as a writer, I am very intent on the script and using the script as like the literal blueprint. I heard Denis Villeneuve talk about this not too long ago, and he was like, "No, look, the script is like sacred, right? Like we only break the script if we have to. Otherwise, that script is exactly what we're trying to shoot towards and trying to capture all of what that is." So I'm really big on having a really good script, and Nathan and I co-write. Nathan serves as sort of like a creative producer over the course of the entire film. So he doesn't put a lot of words on the page. Occasionally he'll jump in and say that, but normally it's more like good notes for me to think about, like overarching story things that I may not be communicating well in the story, but I'm usually the one that's typing it all out. So it goes from this is a good script, and then most scripts are not good scripts, and so I just toss them. I'm like, this isn't very good, so I'm not going to make this movie. But for the ones that we like, and for the ones that would at least give us you know, like this one gives us some really good practice time, because I had directed No Vacancy, but I had Lucas Colombo on set, who he was a co-director, and although he gave the reins to me, I could if I had to fall back on him, I could. And fortunately, I didn't have to fall back on him very often, but this time around, I was like, I don't. I want to be able to do this on my own without having to fall back on anybody. I want to be able to build the team myself. I want to be able to record in Northern Colorado instead of having to travel out to California. And so we have a good script. Then Nathan and I say we want to produce this. We run a nonprofit production company with a very, very small budget. Our budget's about $20K a year. Nathan and I do not get paid. We put all of the money that we get into the films that we make. And so we said, let's go ahead and dedicate money to this particular project. We knew that it was not going to be a big project like No Vacancy, which cost like 4 times as much for the Reclamation Society than we had in our budget. And so we said, we're going to do this for a lot less money. It's probably, so then you start to break down the script. How are we going to film this? And I actually created a version of the script that, because, you know, if you go read the script, it like goes from this character to this character to this character to this character. But really, when you film it, you're filming the interview. You're not going to bring in another character and have them do something different, right? You're going to film the whole interview one at a time. So I had to rewrite the script as interviews, make sure that those were, you know, equal and not missing anything. So that was a important thing not to miss. In other words, both blueprints needed to match each other, the shooting script and the actual the narrative script. Then I had met some people through some showings that we did of No Vacancy here in Northern Colorado, and so one of them was a producer on the film named Maya Jairam, and Maya's amazing, and she was not originally a producer. So what happened was, I went, okay, we're gonna film this thing. I need to go find locations. And I said to Maya, because she kind of knows the filmmaking community up here, I'm like, Maya, do you have any locations that you can point me at? She said, why don't you go talk to these people? I had a couple other people. I said, where should I film this thing? They said, oh, maybe talk to these people. So I found a location, Fort Collins Public Media. It's a really cool little program that's a nonprofit for filmmakers that can go in and, for a very nominal fee, they can use their whole blackout studio, their whole setup with any like lighting and stuff that you need. You can do that there. So I found that. I found a casting director down in Denver, who was very cool, but who I had made an agreement with. And before I paid her, she said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to be able to do this project because I need to go in for an emergency surgery. So I went back to Maya and I was like, Maya, you know a lot of actors in the area. You know a lot of agents in the area. You know a lot of people. Would you like to be our casting director for this film? And Maya was like, sure. So Maya became the casting director. And then she was helping me out with so many other things that I'm like, I'm going to give you a producer credit because you're doing so much for me that I really appreciate it. So Maya helped us find the actors. We went through a whole casting process. We got self-tapes that were sent to us. We then selected down through those self-tapes and said, here are the people we want to do for callbacks. The people came in for callbacks, did a fantastic job. We were able to get a fantastic casting crew. One of the things I'm really big into is that before I direct a project, I kind of want to know what I'm getting myself into. So we actually did a table read as well. Before we'd even cast the film, Maya found 9 people that we could do a table read with. And how many of them ended up being in the film? We had 3 or 4 people who did the table read who ended up being cast because they were so good. So that was awesome. And then the table read helped me out a lot as a director, because when I'm sitting across the table talking to somebody about what the role is and how to get into the character, it also lets me see how other people interpret the role. So there's not just my writing brain and my directing brain doing it, but it's also the acting brain giving me feedback on it. And then we read it in a room full of people to see if the story lands. This is where I go, is it too boring, right? Or will you sit in the room and just watch people at a table read it? And will you think it's interesting, or will you think it's lame? And I just
For me,
for
that would be like the most captivated thing. Literally, I'll say this to you.
Yeah.
If you ever invited me out just to sit at one of your table reads, I would gladly pay an airline ticket to fly out, and I would just sit in a corner like a fly on the wall and just study everybody's way of how they would do a table read and the
Mhm.
process of it, because that way I get a little bit of a behind the scenes
Yeah.
while in the process, and then when I go and watch the final product, it was like, okay, I remember watching these actors prep and prepare for this.
Yep.
I absolutely love that. I
Yeah,
do.
you should totally do that someday. You'll come out. You can stay at my house. We'll do a table read and everything. They're really fun to do, and it's really so. The reason I do them is because I like to test and learn. Right? I don't want to be in the room paying everybody in the room to be in the room and not knowing what I'm doing. Right? Like that's a crazy way to behave. I know some people like to do that creatively because they're a little bit more like artistic in their approach, but I'm a little bit more. I don't want to say business like because it's still a creative thing, but I dedicate a lot of time and energy to getting it right before I show up on set. So we did table read, cast the film. Then in between casting and doing our setup, I'd found a good. I knew that this was going to be a lighting heavy film. Even in the trailer that you showed, the lighting mattered a lot. Like if it's not lit correctly, imagine that if you light an interrogation scene wrong, you lose the entire intensity of it just by the lighting alone. So we got Steve Roberts, who's an awesome gaffer. He actually is a DP, but Nathan was our DP. So I also knew that like Nathan not having ever been a DP before, me being my second time directing, this was going to be kind of a team effort. But I really needed good people in a couple areas. I needed really good costuming. I needed really good lighting, and I needed really good sound because if I didn't have those three things, then nobody would probably want to watch the film. So I got really good people for those, the best people around, in my opinion, some of the best people around. And then I spent more money on that on those areas. Met with an AD, went over the course of like what we're gonna do, how we're gonna film. Trying to think of it. Oh, and then the other thing I do before films is I encourage the actors. I go. This is what I usually tell actors. I say, I don't know what your process is. You're allowed to have your process, and I'm not going to step on your toes in that process. I want the best performance I can get from you. But I do encourage you to write your own character backstories if you want to. I also encourage you, we'll talk about them when you do them just to make sure we're on the same page. And then I also will encourage them to just have a conversation with me beforehand, before we are on set, so that if there's anything else that, and normally, like if it's more of like a supporting character, maybe there's a little less conversation about that. Where if it's more of a lead character, we get more and more into it. Like I had an hour long conversation with our lead actress, Katie. Katie's awesome in this. And then I had Jeffrey, who plays Dr. Townsend. He wrote his own backstory, which was fantastic. Then the morning of our shoot, I hadn't had a chance to talk to Fabian yet. Fabian called me on the phone as I'm driving over. I'm like, hey, I'm glad you called. Let's talk about this role a little bit more. He asked me a few questions about the backstory and stuff. So there was quite a few of the actors that I was able to kind of meet with and get to know a little bit better. And then I also try. That's like all the pre. Yeah, that's probably most of the pre work. Is all. Oh, and I talked to our lighting guy like 4 or 5 times before we shot the film, because I was like, this is the kind of lighting I'm looking for. You know, what kind of equipment do we need that we might not have? We're gonna film on an iPhone. What do we need to know about the way the iPhone may be reading stuff that we should talk about? So yeah, we spent some time. It's a lot of. I like to prep. I'll just put it that way. I like to prep a lot, and so we did a lot of that beforehand.
Nice. Now, I wanted to ask you too, kind of going back, because you had mentioned that with Disclosure that you had different from No Vacancy is you had someone else to lean on.
Yeah.
Now, given the obvious, like, in case if something were to go down, you fully have to know how to maneuver it. Was there any other challenges of running an entire, basically a film set on your own, as opposed to having kind of like a co-person with you that you did with No Vacancy?
Um, so the only additional challenge that I faced, like No Vacancy, I was able to come up with some more creative shots because again, it's we have multiple locations, we have a bigger budget, we have lots and lots of we have giant gimbals and like big trucks full of gear, right? For this, we did not have. We did my gaffer. Steve, he does have a truck and does have a lot of stuff in it, but we just didn't need that stuff because it was all filming at a table. So for me, the pressure was was more on, do I have enough time to get the shots that I want? Am I getting the shots that I want? You know, uh, this computer monitor that I'm literally like watching you on is the monitor I took to set so that I could watch what's being shot. Right? Like I had an HDMI cable. There was like a 25-foot HDMI cable going from this monitor that I'm using right now all the way to the iPhone. And so just little things like that, like we're problem solving, we're not too stressful. I think, and actually, to be honest with you, everybody that we had on set had good attitudes. They were there to work. They were not there to mess around. So I think it was more of a pressure, but not any situations that were insurmountable or any kind of situations that would like put us in a place where we were struggling. My health was not great. I have long COVID and sometimes I get flare ups, and I had a flare up that weekend and my heart rate would not go below 100. You know, normally my heart rate's like 65. It was like 100 the whole time, just because I must have had a virus or something that my body wasn't fighting off very well. So there were challenges like that, but fortunately, I think the prep work and then making sure that we had a pretty simple thing to shoot made it a lot easier, so that I felt like it was a very collaborative environment, a very supportive environment. Everybody there was really cool. You know, I actually look for attitude problems when I hire. If I interview anybody, if I see anybody in an audition that I think has an attitude problem, which by the way I came across a couple, right? Like not like when I say attitude problem, it's not like they were like, oh, this person's a jerk in real life. It's just this person might be a little bit more difficult to work with because they're not as collaborative or something.
Like creative difference.
Yeah, exactly. Like like for example, if I give you some direction in a callback or in a setting like a table read, and your response to me is kind of like, yeah, I got that. Like, don't worry about that. Then I'm like, oh, we're not collaborating anymore. Like, you have a perspective that you don't want to listen to mine. So like, why? Like, so if I'm a director and I get that kind of if you give me that kind of feedback, then I kind of go, well, I don't think we're on the same page because that's not the kind of environment I want to work in. I had actors push back on me. I had actors that said like, hey, here's the backstory that I really like for this character. It was not exactly the backstory I would have written for the character, right? It was slightly different. But instead of saying like, no, it's my way or the highway, I go, oh, this is cool. I like this. What if we tweak this thing? Oh, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Now we're collaborating. As long as we're collaborating, we don't have to be in agreement on something. We can do multiple takes. You do it your way, and then you do it my way. But as soon as I start to see like a gate close or like an attitude that could be like a little bit of a problematic attitude, I won't work with you, man, because it's just life's too short for that. I don't need that in my life.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard of like a lot of, even big time celebrities, that have like that persona that they're difficult to work with. I won't name any names, Dustin Hoffman, but anyway, but I think for me too, yeah, if I was like approaching that, like I would do the same thing too. Not that I would like look for it,
Yeah.
but technically I would want it because then it would give me an excuse to bring out the full Italian in me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely, yeah, because when you see like those bells and whistles and the red flags go up, it's like, okay, well, if I'm having difficulty just with a table read, what is this going to be like when we're actually on set?
Exactly.
And how many hours that we have to put in? It's like I'm putting more stress and more work on myself.
100%.
And it's, and sometimes it's for the best because then you can meet someone else that is willing to, again, go 50-50, hear each other out, and they bring a whole new perspective to the character that you would want greatness, but they even make it even go even further.
Totally.
Now, I want to ask you too, because you had mentioned of how you was writing the script and how you had it for each individual person.
Oh yeah.
How did you go about putting that actually from the paper to film? Did you go more like fade to black? Did you go like straight cut to transition from one character to the next?
Yeah, so we actually played around with this a lot. Our editor, because Josh Taylor from Modern Mouse, Josh from the Modern Mouse YouTube channel.
Yes.
He's our editor on this, and we didn't. When you move from writing to filming to editing, there are three distinct processes, right? Like they're not the same, and they can't be the same. They can't function exactly the same. Um, and we didn't know how we wanted to transition between each character, and so we played around with that a lot. Like there was a time where we were putting little tiny black bars of space between each character, so you get character black bar for even half a second, you know, like really short, and then boom, right back to the character. And then we were like, yeah, that makes a good like 30% of this film, not that much, maybe like 10% of this film, you watching a black bar on a screen. Like when I say a black bar, you just see a whole screen full of black and then the character again, right? And that just wasn't working, so we went more to smash cuts, which is like character to character, like boom, boom, boom. But then there were some times where we had to communicate that time had elapsed, right? So okay, no, that's a fade in, that's a fade out. Like that's important that we kind of nail that like time horizon down. So a lot of that is again another creative process of saying, when you see this on screen, so you see it in your head first as you write, then you see it on the screen, on the monitor in front of you as you're directing, and then you see it cut all together. And all three of those experiences is slightly different, and you're just trying to get to the best possible outcome. In fact, I can't say much about this because I don't want to spoil it. But I was watching a really not a really popular. I was watching a TV show, and they had an ending on that TV show, and I was like, ooh, that ending is awesome. I want to have that ending for our film. It was not planned when I wrote it, right? Like that was not part of the script, but we actually adjusted that in the edit. Like it was the way we were able to do it in the edit. We didn't even film it to be that ending. So yeah, the editing takes on its own creative process. And of course, I've worked with Josh on a lot of projects. He and I have done podcasts together in the past and stuff like that. He's a great editor, so he's easy to work with. So I had a great experience working with Josh. I didn't have a bad experience working with anyone on this shoot. It was awesome.
Oh, sorry about that. Awesome. And another thing too, and I love again how um, see again that's just the nerd in me. See, I like to know like the ins and outs of like how like someone would watch the movie and be like, okay, cut to the next scene.
Right.
It's like, okay, for them that's just cutting to the next. Me, I want to know why it was cut that way, and it's
Exactly.
like again that's just the nerd in me.
Yeah.
Now I wanted to ask you because you had touched a little bit about it's all about like the conspiracy of like knowing of like is there other life forms out there and what have you. You touched a little bit about that, but I wanted to ask you what made you go with that storyline. Was there anything else that you had in mind that you were kind of deciding on? What made you choose this final storyline to go with for Disclosure?
So I have to answer this question in two parts, and one part is after you've seen the film, because otherwise there's too big of a spoiler. I can't explain it. Yeah, it was. So there was a couple things, right? I knew that this film was not going to be based on special effects. I knew that it was not going to be based on action and action sequences. It was going to have to be based on two things, and that was what is the plot that is driving this thing forward, and that plot is driven by the question, who's telling the truth, right? And yes, we do have some other things going on that again are kind of get into spoiler territory, that I think will be fun for you to see. But the other thing is, the character performances really have to drive the film, because the people that are talking to you and like you said that when we started the show, you said like they're just talking directly at us, and part of that is like that person has to portray that they believe what they believe because they're trying to get you to believe it, right? And so the who knows the truth question, I think, was at the heart of it. There's also a again, I'll reveal more of this when we are able to watch the film together. But there's also an element of there's a famous quote from a famous person in this film, and that is a lot of what has to do with this film as well, about what it means to know things and what it means not to know things. And that I think is at the core of the human experience, because there's a lot of things that we don't know. You know what I mean? Like that we'll never know. And I think that is kind of the shared human experience that we all live in, is like what exactly is going on and why is it going on, and we may never know, and that's just kind of something that we have to deal with.
That is true. Very, very true. I'm still trying to figure out why I got the number on last year's tax return, but
Exactly.
so it's like, so to actually go even more in depth, like with, other life forms out there and conspiracy theories and government interrogation and all that. It's very intriguing. Like because when you take it in a place where, again, you're taking real world events, but you're putting it in a fictitious setting where you know that you're in a safe place,
Yeah.
that you can actually watch it and say, wow, I could actually understand how this could actually happen in real
Yeah.
life.
Oh, totally. And I think too, like that, it's really kind of fascinating to me because when you start to write things, writing to me it's much more interesting as a discovery process than it is as a I'm going to tell other people how they should believe about something. And so what's really fascinating to me is as I've done all this research, listening to all these podcasts and listening to all these podcasters talk about what their experiences are, and then I go into a place where I'm writing about those experiences. I think what's really fascinating is that there are some perspectives that I agree with more than others in this film, but to a certain extent, like I'm holding all of them a little bit loosely because I'm like, yeah, that's possible too, right? Like, yeah, I may be wrong about the way that I feel like it probably is, but we'll see we'll see if we ever end up getting actual disclosure, then we'll know.
Very true. Now, I know I asked you this question before we started recording, but for our viewers,
Sure.
at the time of this recording right now, where are you in the process of the film
Yeah.
as we speak?
Yeah, so right now we're in post production, which just means that we've wrapped shooting. It's a 15-minute film. We don't need to do reshoots, and plus reshoots cost a lot of money. So we're not doing any kind of reshoots, and we got everything we needed. So there's no problem there. We didn't even need to do any ADR, which is awesome. ADR, for those folks listening, I know George knows what it is, but ADR is when you don't get a line of dialogue the way you needed to, or there's something that happens with the audio where there's a problem with the audio, and so you need to have the actors come in and re-record the audio, and they're supposed to try and match it up to their lip movements and stuff. Or sometimes it's really bad ADR, like for example. Dead Reckoning has some of the worst ADR I've ever seen. There's like one point where like Tom Cruise is literally talking to Haley Atwell's character, and Haley Atwell's character's lips do not move, and she has a line of dialogue. I'm like, oh my gosh,
There's a lot of
did you do?
movies, like if you literally, because again, I look for that stuff.
Yeah.
There are a lot of movies where you could have the camera on the character that's giving the facial expression
Yes.
to what the character is speaking. But if you look at the character and it's kind of like a side back angle of the
Yep.
camera,
Yep.
and if you really look at the lips don't match what
They're not
the
matching.
wording is.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's what you do in editing. Like you'll say like, oh, the reaction on the character's face who's reacting is the reaction I want to a different line of dialogue, and so you just splice those two together, and then hopefully people don't notice that that's not what's actually happening in that scene. Fortunately, we did not have any ADR. Well, I shouldn't say that. I should knock on wood. All the audio sounds great to me, but technically, so where is the film at? It's with editing. I've seen a fourth draft, or I'm going to watch a fourth draft of the film right after we finish recording. After that, there's two things left to be done. Sound mixing. So once you have a final cut of the film, then you actually say, okay, I want the sound person to go in and make sure the room tone is consistent throughout, make sure that all the sound effects are good throughout, like make sure that all of the audio matches, because they're depending on what mic you're using. Like for example, we were using boom mics and lavalier mics. Well, both there's a couple characters that move around a lot. The lavalier mic is catching all that junk, right, of that movement noise, and so then you have to use the boom mic instead. And which choice do you make in that matter? How do you splice it together? How do you go about doing all of that? That's what sound mixing is. And so after we have a final cut of the film that we go like, yep, this is it. This is the film we want. Then I hand it over to the sound mixing, and we also have a composer working on a soundtrack right now. Sounds awesome. He's got about half of it composed, and then the back half of it he'll work on in the next couple weeks. And then we should be all good to go with our November 1st launch. Because yeah, post production will be over in a couple weeks.
Awesome. I can't wait. And honestly, I can't wait to see the final product, obviously, because I absolutely loved No Vacancy. As I said before, I have one stipulation with that, and I want more.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see what is to become of Disclosure, because again, just right out the bat of watching the trailer, I love how both of your films are done by you, but they have two very different styles of how they're made. And I love that because it shows, you know, your progression as a director, as a storyteller, as a writer. You know, a lot of times, especially in Hollywood, where actors, directors get typecasted of just doing like the same thing over and over again. So variety is the spice of life. So, you know, it's like if you have a story and you know that you believe in it, you know, it'll work. You could put it, you know, pen to paper and paper to screen, you know, all more power to you. But as I said, I can't wait to see Disclosure. As I said, if there's any kind of events or you know, screenings or anything, if I can get over to Colorado, if that's where you're going to hold them, I'm going to do my damnedest to come over and help you promote this film.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, brother. Yeah, we actually do have one screening. There's only one planned screening that isn't an online screening, because we can screen it like on your channel, right? Like we can, it's on my channel. We can share our screen and watch it on your channel. Totally cool. We only have one in-person screening planned, and it's on October 25th right out here in Colorado. So if you're in Colorado and you want more info on that, just leave us a comment down below, and I'll send you a link to the screening. You can sign up for the screening. But yeah, we're just doing the one screening, and it goes right up to YouTube the next week, the very next weekend.
Nice. So. Awesome. Well, we're definitely going to be doing a watch party on here for sure. We'll probably do several ones. Orange Grove 55 will probably have his, but I also wanted to have it on here because I want to get it as much publicity as possible to share it out, because as I said, you do amazing work. I do. And then honestly, in a sense, and I do mean this with all due respect, I'm kind of jealous in a way of you, because it's like you're fulfilling something that I've always wanted to do. So to kind of interview you and talk to you about the process and everything, it gives me a stride to say, okay, maybe one day, you know, I can get in your shoes. I don't expect myself to get into like Francis Ford Coppola or Ron Howard or even Steven Spielberg. Like that's even like a far fetch. But like if I can like just get some sort of format of a vision that I want to do, I would absolutely run with it. So as I said, I'm so happy for you of like what you're doing, and the fact, as you said, that you don't even really get anything out of it, but just the sheer, no pun intended, joy of creating a story that you want to tell. And I absolutely applaud that.
Yeah, and hopefully one day it'll turn into a career. I definitely want to do a feature. I'm going to try to figure out all the different ways I can do a feature. But you know, I didn't direct my first film until I was 40. What was I? 42 years old. So I mean, like I didn't know that I was going to get into directing at 42 years old.
Well, when you get up there, just remember us little people down here.
Yeah, no. I mean, so part of my encouragement to people is like, hey, look, you got plenty of time. Like, if you still want to do this, George, like, figure out a way to do it. Like, and always think about it this way too. Like, this is like the shifting nature of how I was feeling about it. I was like, you know what? I don't need to be Spielberg tomorrow. I need to be able to learn how to be that, right? I need to know what it takes to do that. So I'm going to start small. I'm going to learn the way I learned in school as growing up as a kid, right? You learn
that's very true. That's very true, because even at that time, Spielberg didn't know he was going to become Spielberg.
Exactly. So it's just like kind of these baby steps in the right direction. You know what I mean? Anybody can do it. It's just a matter of figuring it out how it's going to work for you. How do you get funding? How do you get a team together? How do you practice? How do you they're all questions you need to ask, but everyone can do it. It's not like it's rocket science.
I mean, I did attempt it once, but I think people lost it in translation. I stood out in the middle of the road with a piece of cardboard that said "will work for film," and I think people just took it in the complete wrong direction.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can see that.
But in any case, Jay, I want to thank you so much for joining on your very first Hollow Gelato. It was a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to have you back on for a watch party of Disclosure, but I want to have you on more just to discuss film and film history and how stories work, which again, of how stories work, that is your platform.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to have you on more, and I can't wait to see what comes of this film.
Yeah,
And
thanks, man.
yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, and I have a video coming out tomorrow on how stories work with Jay Sherer, where the title is Filmmaking Inspiration, and it's all about how I have started thinking about how to come up with stories. And so for anybody who wants to be in the film industry and maybe like you want to be like, what kind of inspiration do you need to look for? Definitely check out that video tomorrow, because I think it's going to be it's going to break it down in a way that I think it's going to demystify things for people too. Like, oh, this is just how it works. Yeah, cool. It's easy. Go figure it out. So definitely check that out. But yeah, you can find me at How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. That's where the movie is going to be as well, November 1st. Sometime shortly after that, I will be back on this channel talking to George about the movie, getting his reaction to it, and I really appreciate you, George. Thanks for having me on, and can't wait to see what you do with Hollow Gelato.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And everybody, please comment down below on everything that we discussed. Any questions, comments, opinions, throw them in there. I'm for sure Jay would be willing to
Totally.
answer anything that you guys have. And again, this isn't the last time I'm going to have Jay on Hollow Gelato. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm George, the Disney Italiano. And as I always say, in Disney Italiano fashion, stay safe, stay healthy, stay Disney. Italiano